So it's great to see so many familiar faces here and many new ones. I'm going to be offering a seminar on democracy and inequality this semester, challenges and possible solutions. And if you want to sort of get a sense of what's motivating this seminar, if you think back to the 19th century when they were thinking about expanding the franchise, elites were terrified of that possibility because they thought that if you gave everybody the vote, the poor would soak the rich. They would use their new power in the electoral system to redistribute downwards. And it wasn't just the elites who were afraid of it. If you look at Karl Marx's later writings when he'd become disillusioned, it didn't seem like there was going to be a communist revolution after all. He started talking about the parliamentary road to socialism. It was basically the same idea. Maybe the workers would do through the ballot box what they hadn't done at the barricades. And so there's long been this expectation that once, if you had a very unequal society and you imposed democracy on it, you would eventually get redistribution downwards. But if you look at this slide, it's a more complicated story because this looks at, if you look at the top line, which is with the little squares on it, that's a measure of inequality in the US over the last century. You see a kind of U-shaped curve, the top decile. So for the first sort of half of the century, it fits with the 19th century expectations. Inequality comes steadily down. But then it turns into a U-shape, and since the 1970s, inequality on this measure, and just about any other measure of inequality you want to find, goes back up. And so at the present time, we're close to where we were in the Gilded Age a century ago. And this is a measure of the top decile of income, but virtually any measure of inequality you take tells the same story, whether it's the top 1%, the top 10%, and various other measures of income and wealth. We basically see this U-shaped curve. And then the reason I have these other countries up there is to make the point that it's not just the US. Across the democratic capitalist world, we basically see this U-shaped curve over the last century where inequality came down in the first third of the century, bottomed out in the middle third of the century, and then went up. And so a big question is why? And one of the other things that this slide makes clear is it varies somewhat over countries. So one of the things we're going to try and understand in this seminar is why does that happen? Why do democracies not systematically redistribute downward? And what explains the redistribution over different democratic systems? The second big thing we're going to focus on is insecurity, which is related to democracy but different. So this slide is what we call a panel study. That's a study over time. They're basically following baby boomers, late baby boomers. And what they're studying is how often they've had to change jobs. And so here the story is that the world, sort of early post-war world in which people finished either their high school education or their college education, got a job and worked for one company for 30 or 40 years, and then retired, has gone. Partly for a variety of reasons due to globalization, partly due to technology, partly for other reasons. Somebody being born today is going to have to expect to change jobs 12 to 15 times during their work lifetime. Now, for people at the top end of the income distribution, that's fine. It's like, new opportunity after new opportunity after new opportunity. But for many people, most people, it's bouncing down the education, the occupational spectrum, from full-time jobs to full-time jobs without benefits, to part-time jobs, to jobs as so-called independent contractors. And so what you're seeing is ever increasing insecurity in large numbers of the population. And so these two big facts about our world, growing inequality for the past several decades and growing insecurity for the past several decades, are going to set the terms of this seminar. And we're going to look at how American democracy in particular, but also by comparison with other democracies, interact with them. Here's just another picture of the insecurity, and you can see there that the big growth in employment insecurity, the people who have changing jobs more and more often, are middle-aged males. And we're going to look at the potent politics that has flowed out of that. So that is basically the subject matter we're going to be discussing. We're going to look at the ways in which it's been impacted by the pandemic that has accelerated a lot of these trends. And we're going to look at the ways in which American democracy might address these growing insecurities and inequalities. So that's what we're going to be doing, and I'm happy to answer questions about it.